and welcome back to Bunters Yard. And today finally getting to show the class 25. I say finally because I did this about a month ago, and it's sort of been sitting there waiting to be edited, but I'll explain that in a little while. This class 25, although it runs well, doesn't look particularly good. It came to me as weathered, it said in the eBay listing, but it was a good deal, so we went ahead and I ordered in some of this Hornby BR blue, and had some decals printed, and I bought these from I think this is from Fox Transfers. So the idea was to repaint and relivery it, but then I thought, well, it's not a particularly nice model. There's quite a lot of work to do to that, and you know, it's apart from just restoring it, there are lots of these available in a good condition on, you know, eBay and lots of other sites. So I thought we'd sort of fully weather this one and make it a bit of a wreck. We're halfway there anyway. So one of the reasons for not wanting to show this video is that this didn't actually come out as I wanted to at the end. There's probably nothing wrong with it. It's just it wasn't what I envisaged. The end result is nothing like the reference picture that I was working to. So that's kind of one of the lessons, and there's a few lessons to learn along the way of this video, and I'll try and point them out as we go. One is that if you've got a reference image, just do keep on referring to it, keep it close by. For me, the picture was on a screen on a monitor in a totally different room, which I really didn't visit the whole time I was shooting this and weathering this particular class 25. So that's the first thing. If you've got reference image, if you're working towards a particular look or a style, then have them with you on your phone, or print them out and have them nearby. So yeah, so that's lesson one. Reference images, that's the thing. So what we're doing here, we're just gonna just sort of keying this back. So just taking the top coat off with this Tamiya sponge, and then we're going to pop the head coats out. We don't want to paint over those. We could have masked them, but they come out really easily. They're not fixed in particularly firmly, so just knock them out. I've just taken the chassis and the windows away. So the next thing to do is we're going to use a primer, which is going to be like our base coat, our undercoat, and we're going to use some paint chip techniques in a little bit. And I've run out of grey, so I'm going to use just a black and a white surface primer. They're both from Vallejo. Give a little mix together to get a kind of colour that I'm happy with, so just a greyish type shade. And the idea is this is the base coat of the real loco, and then we're going to chip some of the top coats off to reveal this underneath. So this is yeah, say like primer grey-ish. So just while I carry on doing that, something else I wanted to kind of sort of get into one of the videos, and this may be a good opportunity, is that what I do on the channel here is I'm just showing you what I do. I'm not saying this is the way to do it. You know, I've had a few comments, which is all great, and you know, people say, oh, there's a better way to do it, which is fine. I do understand that, and I totally agree. There are ways, and I'm learning all the time. But I'm just trying to show you what I do, and if there's anything useful that you find in the videos that you can use on any of your models, then that's great. On all I've done here, I'm just rehashing things that I've learned from other modelers, from railway modelers and military modelers and so on, and just picking out the bits that I like, that I find useful. But you know, we all learn, and we all make mistakes along the way, and this this video, I wouldn't say it's lots of mistakes, but there's lots of things that I would do differently each time. So that's kind of one of the things. That's one of the reasons I wanted to show this. I was kind of a little bit in two minds whether I was going to show it or not. But yeah, this is just about what I do, and if you like it, that's great. If you don't, skip on to the next one. Hopefully the next one will be better for you. But anyway, So we're just going to prime this. We're just in the single colour, our primer grey that we've mixed up in our from our Vallejo surface primers, and this is just our first shade. We're going to modulate this a little bit, so we'll add some different colours and bits and pieces over this in a sec. So I've added a bit more black into this primer grey, and this we're just going to sort of dot this around. You can see just here and there, just adds like these little splotches and these different coloured patches. And you can use make it lighter or darker, whatever you choose. And this is called, I think this is called modulation. Some of the military modelers use it quite a lot, and it gives this weathered patchy effect. Although we're going to go over this in a moment with a BR bluish type shade. But when we do our paint chip, hopefully some of this sort of modelling will show through. So I'm just going to carry on going around that, and I wanted to mention there's a book that I've read which another YouTuber has put me onto a little while back. This is it's a book called the Outliers, and I put a link down below to this book, which you can get from Amazon or on Kindle. It's just a great book, and it's just about anybody who wants to be good at anything. It doesn't tell you how to be good at stuff, but there's some real good some information in there that's just worth bearing in mind. Now, they've done a sort of survey or you know, research into people who are the top of their field in anything, and to get to a place where you are truly expert at anything, you need about 10,000 hours worth of practice, they reckon. And they've talked to sports people and musicians and scientific and professors and all sorts of things like that. And it kind of works out that you need about 10,000 hours worth of practice at your particular craft to be truly expert at it. Now obviously I'm nowhere near that, and most people who do any of this are never going to get close to that 10,000 hours. So I've got a long way to go, but I'm in a position where I do more weathering than most people, I guess. So I do this pretty much every day, one way or another. But still a long way to become any sort of expert. So the point I'm trying to make is just about practice. So get as much practice in you can, and you will you make mistakes, and we all make mistakes, and I certainly do, and we'll learn from them as we go. And you learn more from mistakes actually than you do from doing things right. You remember the mistakes more, and just want to leave some of these in this video, some of the mistakes that I've made. So here we're just doing some patches. It's like it's been repaired at some point down the line, and it gets painted in a different colour primer, which is weathered differently, or it's just a different colour to start with. A lot of this isn't going to show when we get to the final stage, but it's nice if it's there, because you never know. I mean, it will notice a little bit. We'll see with it, but not as much as this. So we are going to do paint chipping. So I'm using the hairspray technique, and the reason I'm using hairspray is that if I use two coats, so this is the second coat we're applying here, is that the paint chips off really readily. So we get lots of the paint off, and we'll see lots of the this primer colour showing through. We'll leave that to dry for 20 minutes, and we'll come back to that in a sec. So next part is to put on our top colour. So we're going to use the BR blue, but obviously it doesn't look very BR blue there because it needs to look faded. So I mixed it down with like a sand colour. You can use white or maybe yellow, just experiment to find one that you like. But this just looks look faded. Adding white doesn't always make it look faded if you add it in, so just be aware of that. And then I've mixed makes it slightly darker, and we're going to use that along the bottom there, just a sort of tonal variation from top to bottom. Again, a lot of this is not going to notice when we get to the end, as you'll see, but you know, it is there, and it would add some you know, some little bits of variation and interest in places, we hope. Now at this particular point, well, all through this video and some other videos around it, I'm struggling a bit with the airbrush. There was a fault with the airbrush, and I was waiting for a part to arrive, and it's kind of another sort of lesson to learn, I guess, is that, you know, get to know the equipment you're working with. So I know if I mix the paint in a particular way and I do it the same each time, I know what the effect is going to be at particular pressures on the airbrush, and this certainly wasn't happening. And the reason for that is that the nozzle on the end of the airbrush, the little brass nozzle, had kind of worn or splayed, and then the needle was going through much too far, and it was starting to clog. And it's just, you know, if you use a cheaper airbrush, you may not notice that. You might kind of accept that's the way things are. But I would always, you know, this airbrush, this is the Neo from Iwata. I'd recommend, you know, getting something like these. They're about £80, £90 or so from Amazon, and there is a link in my description on every video that I do for this particular airbrush. So if you're looking to go into airbrushes, I really would recommend something like this. As I say, it gives you a good sort of base, you know, like a state of where a decent airbrush would, the sort of effects it gives you. So, so when things go wrong, it's quite obvious that they're going wrong. If you're using a cheaper airbrush, they may clog a lot, they may get lots of blobs of paint come out, it may not be very consistent. So that's you know, so that's another thing to learn, or another lesson that, you know, so I picked up on this. So I noticed at this point definitely there was a fault with the airbrush, and we'd ordered a new part, which we now have, and it's a mile different, much easier to use. So the top, so the roof area here, we are using an even lighter shade of our BR blue, because the top will fade obviously more because it's in the direct sunlight all the time. Well, as much sun as you get in here in Britain, but it will receive more of the sunlight than the sides, so it's going to fade differently. And then we need to paint the fronts. Now I could have masked these off, but because it's because we've used the hairspray, there is a chance that if I put any tape over it to mask it, it's going to pull the paint back with it. So we're going to do it slightly different here, but this could be another one of our lessons. So you're mixing the paint down. The fronts are not going to be bright yellow. They kind of take on a pinky yellow sort of look. So I've mixed a few colours in there to make it look a bit faded and a bit weird. Let's have a look at some reference images. But the fronts can take on like a pink hue. So that's why I put that sort of red in there, just to help out a little bit. So we're mixing this in the palette. We're going to use a brush to apply this with. Hopefully we get in focus. There we go. Now, one of the problems applying with a brush, well, one of the few issues that I have with any brush work, is that especially on this, now with this one has got the hairspray sort of chip coat on there, but as you apply with a brush, you are starting to activate that and that hairspray, so some of the chip effect will start now, rather than you waiting for it to dry and then we're going to chip the yellow off. So we're going to get a bit of a weird effect. So so yeah, if you can avoid using a brush to apply any colours over hairspray chipping, then definitely would avoid that. It's much better to use an airbrush. So we're going to put the decals on. Again, a similar sort of situation, although we didn't have an issue with this one, is that because these are wet, and that will permeate through the new paint layer, and you'll start to activate the hairspray underneath, and the chipping effect will happen in the wrong place at the wrong time. So just be very, very careful. Don't over wet these, and once they're on, try and sort of not to sort of fiddle and faff around with them too much, because any movement and you know, the moisture from this could go through the paint and activate your hairspray layer, and it could all start to lift off in the wrong place at the wrong time. So we're going to renumber these. I can't remember. I think this was just a random number that I chose. Obviously, it's got to begin in 25. If you're modelling a particular loco, then obviously use the numbers from that. But I think it was just numbers that that were easy to cut out of the off of the sheet. As it happens, most of these were going to disappear anyway, somewhere down the line. And then some of these warning flashes. Got a few of these left over from another project. So then we need to get to our paint chipping, kind of the bit I enjoy, and we're just going to use plain water. It doesn't have to be hot or warm or anything like that. We're just going to just wet the whole of the surface. Do a bit at a time. Don't try and do the whole model in one go, because it won't work. You'll get it all over your hands, and you get finger marks and everything. So we need to let that sort of soak in for a little while, just you know, 30 seconds, a minute, or whatever. Doesn't take too long. And then depends on your top coats and how much of the chipping medium you've used. In this case, the hairspray. It will work slightly different. You can just start seeing starting to sort of come away there. We wanted the effect to be a little bit more than that, so we'll swap that maybe for a stiffer brush in a sec. But you know, try with different brushes, and with you can use, you know, cocktail sticks and all sorts of things to create scratches and to start the chip go off. And I've used this rotten old brush, which is probably a bit heavier than I should have used. The effect was a bit harsher than I wanted it to be. And I think one of the main things is, you know, just go a little bit at a time. It's easy to take more off. It's well, it's pretty much impossible to put it back on, isn't it, once it's off? And we're trying to create effects where most of the paint sort of from the top down has gone, so there'll be you know, definite areas you'll see where I'm going to leave the paint on. But around the vents and the windows, you know, around the bottoms of those where the water would catch, you would tend to get the sort of the water ingress under the paint there, and it would lift and peel off eventually. So you can see the effect we're trying to, we're sort of aiming towards there. So we're going to try and leave a lot of the paint on the bottom, not so much on the top. But again, if you've got a reference image, try and work to that reference image, rather than trying to remember what it was like on the screen in the other room, which I did. You can just see at that point where the there's that patch that we painted a darker primer colour underneath, and it's starting to show through. So it just breaks up that sort of that single primer grey underneath. It just adds just something to it. And we get to the decal, just be careful because it's so easy to just use your brush and take the whole of the decal off. We kind of want little bits of it maybe to fall off. There we go, I'm happy with that. Because it will lift off once the paint, you know, the top colour of the blue goes, it's going to take some of that delivery with it. But you can still see what it is. That's the idea. This is never going to be pristine. You may just want to work around it, or you may want to put the decals on after you've done the chipping, and then maybe just put an effect over the decal just to make it look as if it's chipped off. Now on the front you can see it looks pretty shabby, and I'm really not too happy with this because most of the hairspray has sort of been activated when we put the paint on, so it's going to be a little bit random, and it was just too much. I think there's too much of the primer showing, so I wasn't too pleased with this particular part. Not that you can see it because it's not in focus, but there you go. Now, a lot of times we do you know, any of our models, it's always a good idea to walk away from it, have a cup of tea, or even you know, go to bed and have a look in the morning. Sometimes, you know, we kind of get too attached to it, and you become a bit blind to the whole thing, and you can walk away and then come back 10 minutes later and you think it's much better than you thought, or the mistakes you've made are obvious. So take a break from it from time to time, and then sort of step back and have another look. So we're going to do the same on the roof. We're going to chip the roof off as well. The bits like these, sort of the raised areas, they will catch the brush quite nicely. So some of the detail will show through, and with the top, as before, sort of go side to side as much as you can, and that will sort of simulate paint the water running from the top from side to side rather than lengthways, which is going to look wrong. Or in hindsight, it might have been an idea to do the roof in a dark grey rather than that blue. So I've seen images with both colours, I think, with grey roofs and with painted roofs. So I went with the blue on this particular one. And you may want to use as your undercoat maybe rust, so lots of browns rather than the primer greys. Again, it's just what I chose to do on this one. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen me post this quite a few weeks ago, and I made a comment on there that I wasn't just terribly happy with it, and it was because, like I say, it's not as it was in the reference image, which was my mistake. I didn't look at the reference image anywhere near enough. But I popped this on Instagram and got quite a good response, lots of likes really quickly, and I put it on eBay as well just to test the water, and it sold within a few hours. So obviously what I've done, people like, which is great. Like I say, it's just not what I had in mind. So if you're unsure of anything, you know, Instagram, the community that sort of I'm in at the moment, They seem to be very good and honest people. There was a couple of people, you know, did make some comments which were truly justified, but most were very positive, which is great. You make me feel good. And then, as I say, someone bought it on eBay anyway, pretty quickly. So yeah, it's just a personal preference, isn't it, of any of this, I guess. So once you finish that, we just dab it with the cloth. Don't wipe it, otherwise you pour more paint off, and then we'll let it fully dry before we continue. So our next thing is we're painting our bogies. Sorry you can't see the colours, but that's a dark mahogany and also a black from Vallejo. I'll just mix them together just to kind of give me I don't want it to be totally black, because it wouldn't be at this sort of stage in its life. But you can see what we're going to do. We're going to paint it in black, and then we're going to use a dark rust weathering powder to make it look rusty, of course. Now this is a working model, so just going to be a little bit easy with the wheels. We need to clean them off because any of the overspray of this paint and any lacquers that we use and in the weathering powders will make this run really poorly, if at all. So we just need to bear that in mind, that we need to clean this off as we go. And to clean them off, I generally use airbrush cleaner on a Q-tip, on a cotton bud, and it works particularly well. Now one of those bogies is driven, obviously, and that's a little bit more tricky, so you can put it on your you've got rolling road, it works really well on there, or just use a battery on across the wheels, and that will sometimes spin the wheels. But on these, you know, multiple bogies, these twins, it doesn't always work that way, unfortunately, because you need one from the negative from one side and the positive from the other end, so it's a little bit tricky sometimes. But I put mine on a rolling road, and they give them a good clean that way. So onto the rust. Now we're using, these are oil brush colours, we've used these before, and I'm just going to dot these in. This is not sort of mixed down any more than it is already in the bottles that it comes in, but we're going to use a smaller brush because the big brush that you get in there is huge in comparison. So I'm just going to dot it in where I think the rust will run from. Now this is the light of the shade. We're going to use a couple of different colours, and we'll use the black to sort of make sort of a contrast in some of the heavier rust areas. Now in my mind, when I was doing this was kind of pretty much like the reference picture I was working towards. In reality, it's nothing like it, and I'm putting too much of this rust on as far as my reference image is concerned. The rust will be in, you know, similar places around these edges of these vents and along that top, but there's just on this one I'm just putting on more than I really should have, and I didn't check back on the reference image until it was much too late. So we normally let that dry for, you know, just even a couple of minutes is fine. It will take a long time to dry, but just let it go off just a little tiny bit, and then we need to use the correct thinners for oil paints, which is an odorless thinner. Just make sure it is correct oil thinners, and then we're using a soft brush, and then we're going to wipe as much as that we're off. We just want a damp brush, we don't want it to be soaking wet, otherwise you get the totally wrong effects. And then just pop it on and just drag it down. Now, the first time you take it will sort of activate it a little bit, you can see, and then just we'll just drag it down. So now I haven't put on as near enough of the oils to start with as I should have, because the effect is just it's pretty much gone. It's almost non-existent now. So we need to reapply that again. So I'm just going to put some heavier dots in, and then we'll go over it again. Now, one of the reasons I've left this in is because, you know, lots of time when I edit videos, and I'm sure other YouTubers are the same, is that if things doesn't go right, we just edit it out. We just don't show it, and then either redo it again or just do the other side of the of whatever it is we're working on once we've practiced and made sure we got it right. Things do go wrong, but I thought on this particular one I'll just leave it in, just to show that, you know, it's never perfect every time. So yeah, I'm guilty of editing out any sort of mistakes that I've made, but I wanted to leave them all in this one, warts and all. So there we go. So using a different brush, slightly less thinners on this one, and heavier oil to start with, and we're kind of getting there. Again, it's just it's a lot heavier than it looked in my reference image, so sorry to keep on sort of banging on about that, but it's just I think it's important if you're working towards a particular look, is to get that reference image in front of you. If you can print it off, stick it on the wall, or even like have it on, you know, your phone or your iPad, so it's there all the time. That's a good thing. So I think for this particular model, this is where the problem for me kind of really began, because I'm just putting far too much oil or paints on there, I think, now. It's you know, for a certain look it'll be fine, but I say it wasn't quite what I was after, and I think the don't know, it just looks too rusty for what I wanted. But you're sitting on the back of a layout in the scrapyard or behind the engine shed, it would look fine, I guess. And I'm sure, well, I hope the new owner is happy with it. So I think at this stage, in an effort to sort of rescue it, I think I'd maybe possibly realised that it was going a bit wrong. Is that I'm just adding more of this oils on. You can see the effect is different. It's building up, so we're kind of getting somewhere. But yeah, kind of going in the wrong direction very slightly. So we're going to do the same on the front. This is the darker of the oil brush here, I think. Going to strategically put that in places where, you know, rust might happen, around these joins and the rails and around the panels and so on. And then same again with that brush, dampened in oils, thinners. We're just going to drag that down. So we're going back round onto the side, and we can use this darker of the, this is dark rust, dark brown from the oil brusher range. And we're not going to put this on every run. We're just going to put it on a few, just to add a bit of sort of texture to a couple of the runs, just to enhance them a little bit. be careful when you're adding a second colour on, because the first layer, you could reactivate the first colour of rust with any thinners or with the oils as you're adding it again. So to be safe, you should really leave it overnight, or even give it a, a barrier coat of a varnish. I don't. I'm just trying to be very careful the second time around. Although the effect, the positive effect, is that they will blend together. So see, the colours will mix together, and you won't get this sort of distinct lines between one and the other of the tones of different rust you use. So just bear that in mind when you're doing this, that yeah, the oils will take quite some time to dry properly, so they will mix and react with each other. I'm just going along the sort of lower edges. We're not going to do the whole of the model, but you will get sort of rust patches and grime and grease building up around the lower edges of the panels. So we're just trying to simulate that. To continue with that, I say I'm not going to do all of the loco, it's just going to be in certain places. I'll continue with that and come back to you in a sec. So onto the roof. So we're going to use the same colours of rust. Now I've thinned this down ever so slightly just to make it more like a wash, and I just wanted to get it into those areas, you know, around the detail, where it would where the water would build up, and obviously the rust would follow. So just those areas there. Just going to paint it in around those panels. And then using my blue paper cloth, we're just going to wipe it back, and you can just see it leaves that little wash around those panel lines, and catches some of the rivets and so on. So it just kind of like, again, it just adds the sort of texture to that, and we can add some different colours in. This is the dark brown rust, which again is thinned down. I'm just being fairly random with this. Things always look different on the screen when we're doing this, because you're watching this on a, your 50-inch plasma or whatever you've got, and it's you're probably seeing this magnified 20 or 30 times bigger than the real model. So you'll see the brush strokes and some of the bits and pieces, but when it's on the layout, they look totally different from a distance. So you just need to bear that in mind. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I don't know. I'm not trying to sort of make excuses for any poor workmanship, but yeah, don't beat yourself up over these things. If you see little brush marks and things like that, it doesn't really it's not really going to matter because of the scale we're working at. Anyway, so the vents we've painted in just a blackish colour, just to add some background to that, and they tend to rust, these things, and they don't rust all over. You might get a patch. Have a look at sort of reference images. I might have mentioned that once before, and see how they do rust. But you normally do get like a soot effect and a bit of colour, and the rust appearing here and there as well. So there's quite a few different colours going on. Lots of modelers will just paint this in a black soot, which is fine. They're not always like that. Some of the in-service locos would just be black, but I think you'll find there is going to be some different tones in there. So just have a proper look at a number of reference images and find a look that you like. it's quite likely that all the vents are not going to be exactly the same, because if they're different areas, they may weather and rust in different ways. So they haven't all got to be exactly the same. So I'm adding in some different shades of this yellow sort of from the rust pack that I really like, and yeah, just some, I've got 3 or 4 different colours of rust on the palette that we're using. So on the bogies, as I said before, we've already painted this in this very dark brown black that we've mixed from the Vallejo model air colours, and we're using the dark brown rust weathering powder, and hopefully you can see that effect that I think works really well. It's quite nice, straightforward and simple. And we're using again the yellow, which is kind of, it seems a weird colour, but it blends in really nicely. It's becoming one of my sort of favourites to add in. Add some powders to the top, and then we've got our weathering. You can see it in the background there. We've got a dark earth weathering powder, which is always quite useful, and also there's the chrome oxide green from Hornby. It's in there. Links in the description to that one as well. It's quite a useful thing to use. Just to add it in, it just looks like a bit of as a kind of bit of a mossy algae type look. Just don't use it on its own because it's far too green, but just mix it in with some other colours, and it just adds that sort of moss looking colour. And this is again from Hornby. It's their black powder, which is really nice to use. So much different to the Vallejo one I've used before. And we're just going to dab that around a couple of the vents, and especially across the top there, as you saw. This just adds a bit of that sooty, smoky effect in. A little bit more of that green. Try not to go too. I'm trying not to be too heavy-handed with it. Sometimes you just get a splash of that green. There'll be a lump of it, and it'll all go a little bit too bright. I'm just trying to be mindful of that. So that's pretty much it. Needs a coat of lacquer and then we're done. And that's it, we're all finished. So at the end of this video there's a short sort of roll call of our new members that have sort of paid to get sneaky peeks of the previews and so on. And just an enormous thanks to all of those that have joined up. Anything that we get from membership goes straight back into this channel. So until next time, we will see you back at Bunters Yard. Stay safe and have a good day.